Pay wallet and Bitcore. Ryan also worked with Reddit for a while with their cryptocurrency implementation. And today, he's presenting Datt, which is a sort of a decentralized version of that, but he'll get more into the details on that. Everybody finding seats? Beautiful. And just for anyone who didn't hear me earlier, there is a sign-up sheet in the back for lightning talks. Put your name on that in a website, and at the end you can talk whatever you want for a minute. We'll do that at the end. There you go. You can definitely do a lightning talk about lightning. All right, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. All right, thank you. Okay, well, I'll just... All right. I'm Ryan X. Charles. As Travis told you, I was formerly of BitPay, did a lot of open source stuff there. I joined Reddit last September and worked there for 4 months, which is it's a really funny, I'm going to cover some of it when I talk about it because I sort of have to explain the context of this, but I'm not going to explain everything. I left Reddit in January and I joined BitGo and worked there for several months. Again, you know, sort of short. But I left because I wrote this article called "Fix Reddit with Bitcoin" in the midst of turmoil that was going on at Reddit, and it was very popular. I decided to go full time on this. So I'll just launch into the explanation here. So my talk is I'll cover like why I'm doing what I'm doing, what it is and stuff, and the background, as well as some of the details of where we stand with respect to what this project is and what the status is and what the prototype is and all that stuff. I was hired at Reddit by Yishan Wang, who was the CEO of Reddit at the time. And I was working at BitPay, and I was contacted by a recruiter who put me in touch with Yishan. And I wasn't looking to leave BitPay, but I was just very excited about the prospect of like working at Reddit as cryptocurrency engineer. It sounded really interesting. So I talked with Yishan, and we had a really great conversation, which I didn't reveal sort of publicly originally, but we actually, part of the reason why I was hired was that Yishan and I were both very excited about decentralizing Reddit. We're like, before I met him, I tried to think about what would I say to the CEO of Reddit if I could talk with him for an hour. I'm like, okay, well, let me think. Here's what you guys should do. You should decentralize Reddit. So that's what I said. We had lunch, very good lunch, and it ended up with me being hired at the company as the cryptocurrency engineer. So anyway, I'm not going to go through the whole story. There's a Let's Talk Bitcoin episode where I sketch out the whole dramatic story of everything that happened. So you can listen to that episode if you want to know all the details of all that. Fast forward to this past summer. Reddit actually had just been going through sort of some unusual turbulence for about a year. And it reached sort of culminated with this dramatic turmoil when they laid off a woman named Victoria. I don't know what her official title was, but she was sort of a liaison between the community and the company. And so when they laid her off, it was very sudden. They didn't like communicate this to some of their community members. They were furious. The mods of one of the most popular subreddits, r/IAMA, shut down the subreddit and complained like, oh my gosh, Reddit, you haven't been listening to us for a year, and now you fire the one person that we can talk to help meet our needs. So it was a huge outrage. It wasn't just r/IAMA, it was a bunch of other subreddits shut down. So it's just like event after event happened at Reddit, and then there's this dramatic thing. There's other stuff going on at the company that I won't go into, but it ultimately led to Ellen Pao, who was the CEO, resigning as a result of all this turmoil, and she was replaced by Steve Huffman, who's one of the original co-founders of Reddit. So that's all the drama there. In the midst of this, I'm like, okay, well, I couldn't help but revisit like my time at Reddit and think about the stuff I was working on then, and I'm like, well, some of the stuff I was working on was probably ill-fated. Some of it was actually really cool and I think had a lot of potential. So I just wrote this article called "Fix Reddit with Bitcoin," just in the middle of all this this turmoil. And the article was very popular. It's the most popular article I've ever written. Like when you look at anything else I've written anywhere, it's way more popular. Very widely known in the Bitcoin world. Maybe not everybody heard about it, but a lot of people read the article in the sort of Bitcoin world, as well as the sort of decentralized stuff community, as well as basically everyone who was angry with Reddit at the time heard about this and read the article like, okay, this is interesting. You know, maybe this can fix our problems. So anyway, I wrote the article, and I talked about things like how I talked with you, Sean, about decentralizing Reddit and all that. And I think this really just sparked with people that people recognized some of the ideas I was talking about were relevant for making a better social community experience. So it was written about, my article was written about in Wired, in Business Insider, and Recode. It was also written about in places like CoinDesk and a few other like Bitcoin periodicals. So I decided to work on this full time because the validation was very strong. I'm like, I've wanted to start a company for a long time. My skill set and my background is exactly perfect for this. I'm doing it. I'm going to start a company around this idea. So that was, I think it was in July, and then for totally different reasons, we went to India with Blockchain University. I'm looking at Jeff, who went to India with us. And that was a really cool experience, unrelated, except that I couldn't start full-time until I got back. So then I get back from India, and I knew that the one thing, I wanted this to be a community project, and open source, decentralized, all that. So I didn't want to like dictate anything, but I knew I had to come up with a name. So I just brainstormed the coolest name I could come up with, which was Decentralize All the Things Datt. I thought, that's perfect, that's cool. So then I queried a few people and asked what they thought of the name. Everybody seemed to like the name. So I stuck with that name. I put together an international hackathon on the weekend of July 31st to August 2nd with the help of Blockchain University, actually. I don't see Neha, she helped me organize it. The hackathon was, there was sort of for the people that were still in India, there was sort of a component. We sort of linked a Blockchain University hackathon with my hackathon. So we had a location in India, a location in Buenos Aires, and a location in San Francisco, as well as on our Slack channel. So it's genuinely an international hackathon. So I created a GitHub page. I didn't really have a concrete plan about anything. I'm just like, okay, well, we need a GitHub page, we need like a Slack channel or something. So I created all this stuff, and 80 people had emailed me from my article. So I contacted all those people and said, okay, I'm starting this. We're doing it. We're going to make Datt. And brought everyone to the Slack channel, and we started working on it. Meanwhile, Dan of IDEO contacted me. He's like, Ryan, we're very interested in what you're doing. Why don't you come hang out with us for a while? So I ended up becoming entrepreneur in residence at IDEO Futures. So I hang out with those guys pretty frequently. So that's sort of how everything started. People asked a lot of really good questions about this. Like, if I have to explain in a few words what we're building, it depends on who I'm talking to. So since I'm talking to a Bitcoin audience, you guys are getting the decentralized Bitcoin view of this. Maybe I can say more about that later, but these mock-ups were created by a guy named Chris Robinson, who's a very talented designer. He's one of our contributors, and he was very, he loved the idea. He loved, everything about what we're working on, the decentralization, Bitcoin payments. So he made a bunch of really beautiful mock-ups. The graphics really, you can't quite see it, it's a little bit blurry, but this is an example of the front page. It looks similar to Reddit. You see links, you see little images, with one difference being those little dots that you can see on the left. When you press that dot, you highlight the dot, it's the same thing as like upvoting on Reddit, but you're actually paying the person Bitcoin. So you're giving them a little Bitcoin tip. You can think of it, it's sort of, if ChangeTip were integrated to a website, or if Zapchain looked like Reddit, it would look like this, right? So that's sort of the idea there. Here's another little mock-up of a post. When you zoom in and look at the content, this is creating something. This is what it would look like when you look at your personal messages between yourself and other people. And here's what the Bitcoin wallet might look like. The caveat that I say here is that the end product may be different, and I say that because we're putting a whole bunch of thought. When I say we, it's like me and the community members. We're putting a lot of thought into what the product should actually be, because I'm not convinced that like just copying Reddit and then making upvoting equal to like tipping someone is the best idea. So we have several different product plans that are sort of options. So it'll probably look similar to this, but not exactly the same. And there'll be some important differences. Like, for instance, the front page may not be just like on Reddit, they sort of, if you're not logged in, they just sort of show you like a standard, here's all the contents, like the top 20 subreddits or something like that. If you're logged in, you pick your subreddits. It'll probably be more focused on following people rather than communities. So anyway, it will be different than this, but it'll still look similar to these mockups because they're wonderful mockups. So everything's open source. Everything we've done so far is completely in the open. Everything but our Slack channel, because Slack channel Slack is by just the way it's designed is sort of closed. But you can sign up by clicking the button on our landing page. So everything's open source. Our business plans and product plans, all the stuff I'm talking about, the plans are all open source. They're on our GitHub repo. And I'm doing it that way because when I try to build like a social media app or a community, well, first of all, I believe in open source software. Ideologically, I like it. I would do it that way anyway. But it's the reason why there's attention around this project. It's the reason why there's a community. The fact that I've done everything openly is why there's anybody working on it and why anybody knows about it. So I think it's really valuable to do everything completely in the open. So that's why I'm doing it that way. And we have about 20 people that have made some type of substantial contribution, either for the software or for the business plans or product plans and stuff like that. So the status is, let's see, we've been working on it for almost 3 months. It's not done. I would show you a working prototype if it were finished. It's sort of, there is an actual app with an interface and stuff, so you can create a new identity, but it's too unworking to demo. So it's 75% finished. So the goal is in November we'll launch an invite-only prototype. Of course, open source, you can download and run it anyway. But I'll specifically email some people and try to get feedback at that point once it's actually usable enough that people can understand how it really works. Yeah, so we need to, I'm very concerned, like I want to make something mainstream, right? So I really want to nail the product. I want to nail the way the incentives work. I want people to want to have to, not to have to, I want people to want to pay for things. There's one of the questions people ask when I tell them what I'm doing is, why would I want to pay for content on a social media app? I can use Reddit today and everything's free. I can use Facebook today and everything's free. There are cases where you would want to pay. If you believe in something somebody has said, you might want to just sponsor that person. You might want to give them a payment. ChangeTip does this successfully. Zapchain does this successfully. I think there are cases where you want to pay somebody. There are actually a whole bunch of companies that are trying to figure out how to encourage people to pay for content, make it possible for content creators to earn money. So in any case, we'll figure, even after the thing is sort of semi-working in November, it'll still be a while before we do a public launch so that we can have time to solve all those problems. So the product overview, I basically said this already, but there'll probably be following like Twitter, so it won't be exactly the same as Reddit. And you do not need to have Bitcoin to do anything. That's another question people ask about this a lot, like, oh my gosh, if it requires Bitcoin, nobody has Bitcoin. You don't have to have Bitcoin to view content or to post content. It's sort of a feature, but you don't have to have it. The community, because we're really aiming to create something mainstream. Our core users are all people such as ourselves, people that are interested in this stuff, so people that want to go to a Bitcoin meetup. We'll probably try it out just for fun because it's interesting. However, that user base is obviously very small. Like I would never be able to create a successful company just catering to Bitcoin users. So we have several different community plans about how to sort of, okay, we start with who are our core users, how do we get from this to something larger? How do we make features that appeal to people like us, as well as a mainstream audience? So yeah, so we have several different plans for that. We haven't nailed the plan, but I think we'll figure it out. The business model, this is another, like people think, oh, it's decentralized. How could you earn money? I think to me this is like a non-issue. I think it's very obvious. We will just take a portion of payments. Almost no one is going to modify the client to like take out that portion. It's technically optional, but we'll just take a cut of the payments. I think that will work. We'll see. There are other ways we could earn money. We can provide services. I don't know if is anybody from OpenBazaar here? OpenBazaar's, okay. I hope I don't mischaracterize what you guys are doing, but their business plan, as I understand it, or the OB one, their business plan is something like they're going to do more like adding, creating other products and services, not so much trying to monetize the protocol. I'm trying to monetize the protocol. When people make payments on this thing, a cut goes to the company by default. At least that's the plan. We'll see. We don't necessarily have to launch that way. But it is technically optional, and people can just turn it off if they change the config or whatever. So that's the plan. Technology overview. How many people in this audience are engineers before I dive into something that's super technical? Okay, a whole bunch of people. Okay, so I'll feel free to launch into anything technical. So I have developed my own custom peer-to-peer protocol, which is not a good idea, and we're not going to stick with this. I'm doing it this way for now because I can make things work the fastest this way. There are several other protocols. There's one that's actually, I read the abstract and haven't had time to actually read the paper yet. But there's a protocol that's designed that's something like Usenet, where the users only store the content that they care about. So you store like basically your channels that you care about. And there's already, there's at least one well worked out protocol that does exactly that. That's perfect for us. There are other completely different options. There's something called IPFS, which some people here are probably familiar with. IPFS is great. I'm not using it because we're doing everything in a browser and they didn't have their browser implementation yet. But IPFS is a really good option. And all the code is, so it's written in JavaScript. I'm a JavaScript expert. I like it. I like being able to build apps that everybody can run. So I sort of default to JavaScript, and only if I have a good reason to do something different will I do it in a different language. So everything's in JavaScript. Even our crypto's in JavaScript. However, both for security and for speed reasons, we'll probably migrate that stuff to C++, which you can integrate, or C or C++, which is A, there are already libraries that do that, and B, it's easy to integrate that type of stuff into Node. Identity, since Ryan Shea is here, OneName is on our list of, well, how are we going to solve identities? Well, yeah, we'll use OneName, right? So that's an option for us, except that when we launch, the way it works right now, when you log in, you don't log in, you visit the web page, and it auto-generates a new identity for you. It generates a key pair. And then you can just set your name. So it defaults to naming everyone Satoshi. So we don't actually have unique names right now. Like, it's just, everybody can be called Satoshi and you would never know. So we don't solve that problem right now. So OneName's on our list. When we get around to actually solving it for real, we'll do OneName. So yeah, are there any questions about any of this stuff, the product technology, anything I've covered so far? Okay, so again, it's all open source. I encourage anybody, like I haven't programmed in like 9 days or something if you look at the repo, because I've been doing other stuff, but I had a streak where I programmed every single day for 3 solid weeks. And I'm doing most of the programming. So there are contributors, but they're all part-time. So they just can't do, a huge amount of work on it. So if you feel like contributing, there is a list of issues, and feel free to grab an issue and help. They're also, since everything else is open source, it's business. You can also just read it and learn from it if you're curious. Our business plans are open source. You can look all that stuff up on our GitHub page. Product plans and community plans are all open source. We are on. We have a mailing list, so if you want to sign up and get information about it, you want to hear about it when we launch, I'll email everybody on the mailing list. When we launch, we have a Twitter blog, and you can sign up for a Slack channel. And, okay, I'll get to your question in 1 second, but I want to thank everybody who helped get this far. So these are the people who either wrote a document or contributed source code or something like that. So thank you to everyone. This includes IDEO Futures, who's sort of helping me with Office Space and stuff right now, and very valuable input. ChangeTip is on the list because ChangeTip sponsored our first hackathon, so I really like ChangeTip. And Blockchain University also helped with our first hackathon, and I'm, have nothing but positive things to say about Blockchain University. I'm teaching there tomorrow, so so thank you to everyone, and yeah, any questions or anything? Yes.
So the name is Datt for Decentralize All the Things. In what way is Datt decentralizing the interface to Datt itself? In other words, what control does the company behind Datt have in terms of content that's on the actual network?
Yeah, okay, so because we're using web technologies, people don't, you might not immediately think, you might think it's a website or something. The protocol is all decentralized, so we don't control the content. It's on especially if we use IPFS, right? it'll be, we don't control the content. We can't censor the content. Now, there are a bunch of details here. The way the interface will work, you can run a web app offline. I think almost no one will do this. They're going to go to the web page and they're going to go to datt.co or whatever other, if we get datt.com, maybe we'll do that if I can buy it. And they'll be going through our company. And our company will have to censor some content that's visible on our web page. So if we don't like, if somebody's posting something that's illegal, we will delete it from our web page. The way we do that is our node basically censors that data. But we're not censoring the network. If you run the app locally and you're connecting to other peers, you can access all of the data. So that's our strategy there. Like when you go to our website, you will not necessarily see all the content. And I guess I hope that people don't post things that we disagree with. I'm pretty sure that will happen. And so I'm just being open, like there will come a time when we have to delete something from our node. But if you run the app locally and you connect to different peers, we can't delete it from other people's computers. So it's still there. So it should be, from a user's point of view, if you care about censorship, you can run the app locally and bypass any censorship that the company does. So does that answer your question? Okay.
With regard to identity, I mean, right now you can have throwaway accounts, but with OneName, you sort of kind of build a reputation by proving who you are. So how do you get around in having the ability to have throwaway accounts very easily?
Yeah, so there are all sorts of, we have different solutions to this. Right now we don't solve it. We will probably have to solve this somehow before we launch. There's one way we can do this is, we can either, there are several ways. Basically, if you start thinking of ways you can leverage Bitcoin and the blockchain, there are ways to do this. You can, if you have to prove you've made a payment, then that's not free to create a new identity. That's like the most straightforward way, in my opinion, to like give a cost to creating an identity. Maybe they have to pay the company. If we build into the protocol that they have to give us a payment. Another option is they prove they burn money instead. That's something a number of like cryptocurrencies people have done. You prove you burn something that gets you a stake in the project. That way it's not free. You can't just create new identities if you do it that way. Right now we don't solve it. So in the prototype, it's not solved. You log in, you have a new identity, you're as good as anybody else. But yeah, that's a great question. OpenBazaar is another project they have their own solution to this. I don't know it in detail, but I know they involve proof of work. So your computer has to do a little bit of proof of work when you create a new identity, so it's not free. There might be other parts to that, I don't know. But yeah, that's a real problem. So identities, that is a generic problem with any sort of decentralized system. And I wouldn't say we have a complete solution to it, but we'll take these sort of hacks. You have to pay something, you have to do proof of work or whatever, and apply that, and it'll be hard to make a new identity. There'll probably still be spam and stuff.
Have you thought about how the ideology of the site will shift when, compared to say Reddit, when with the feature of the tipping, that in the minds of content creators right now, Reddit, it's actually either a marketing play or altruism, right? Or just like get upvotes,
yeah.
Which is sort of a marketing thing. But by including the payments, you will shift the ideology and the motivation behind content creators in possibly not so good ways. And when you look at some history, I'm kind of curious, are there any comparables where tipping has led to, say, sustainability for content creators? My experience, on this side has seen that it almost becomes disingenuous that content creators can make it sustainable. Like, we're talking independent content creators, the vast majority can make a sustainable living is disingenuous. The long tail's a bit too long. And then on the people who are paying, such a very, very small fraction are willing to pay for content on one-off basis. And I say that in the comparison to say something like Netflix, where you pay a monthly fee and you can consume as much content as you want.
Yeah. So everything you said is like true. I mean, everything you said is right. You're naming real problems. So I guess I'll start off with comparing and contrasting with Reddit. Reddit is actually philosophically like opposed to everything I've been saying in this talk, because they're actually opposed to making finance any part of the Reddit experience. It's all free. You cannot sell a subreddit to someone. That's against their terms of service. You're banned. You cannot buy upvotes. It's against their terms of service. Anytime you start paying for things on Reddit, it's against the rules. That is not against the rules on our thing. Like, you are paying other people for producing content. If you write something good and people pay you, that's a good thing. I want to create a market. Like, if there end up being subreddits on this thing that people own, then I want people to be able to buy and sell the subreddits. The feeling will be completely different. Now, I think my goal is to create something a little bit more professional. I think if we do this correctly, the content quality will be higher. People will be correctly incentivized to, say, write a really good article. They'll spend 5 or 10 more minutes on it and make it really good because they're like, it might make a difference. I might not be on that long tail. I might be the one that gets, $1,000 for writing an article or something. Yeah, I mean, the feeling will be completely different than Reddit. There is going to be a long tail. Most people are not going to earn anything. Most people are not going to spend anything. There's also the Netflix thing you mentioned. It would be way better for us as a company if we get a recurring payments where people sort of sign up. It's also easier psychologically for the users if they bit the bullet, they're paying $10 a month, now they can just click as much as they want, rather than having to make a decision every single time they click. That's another option we've got it listed. Is there a way we can do it that way? Because I feel like that might be better for everyone, rather than every single time you click, you're making a decision. No, it's you make a decision on a monthly basis, and then you click 10 times, and the payments are distributed across 10 people. Those are options. The prototype will probably just be you click and make a payment, but that's exactly why I'm going to launch an immature prototype, is to see can this work, or do we have to rethink this and do it very differently? So we might end up a number of people have suggested this. If we do something on a monthly basis, that might be better for everyone. So we might end up going that route. There are several questions, but I think you were the first. Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's assume I'm a layman. The difference between what I understand is, say you're Reddit Gold, right? You can tip somebody, as I understand it, in Reddit Gold, which is then redeemable for actual cash, right? And then is that not the case? So again, assume I'm a layman here, but so I guess what is the difference?
Well, that is a
people were when they were so happy to get Reddit Gold.
Well, you get an icon on your screen, and you get you. Yeah. Mason.
How do you foresee this competing for journalists from traditional news and media outlets? Yeah.
So I think. I mean, it would be ridiculously there's no way we're going to be competing with the New York Times anytime soon. But I think if we pull this off and do make it really professional, then over the long term, yeah, I think it's sort of decentralizing journalism. How do you become a journalist for the New York Times? You have to apply for a job. Democratizes journalism. Journalism isn't really our focus, but that's sort of the long-term vision here. I think stuff like that, making it possible for anybody to be a journalist. You don't have to get a job with the New York Times to do it. You can just be a journalist and get paid. I think that's a very powerful idea. So, yes.
3 things: copyright liability and censorship. On copyright, if I go and I copy and paste a post by a New York Times writer, and then I start getting paid, and you're getting a cut of that, how do you get away from copyright lawsuits? And you immediately, by monetizing the protocol, you're a liability target. And 2, if I have to pay to publish or to comment, now the censor is not the centralized entity Reddit, it's money. So if I'm poor, how do I have a voice?
Yeah. Okay. So first of all, on the copyright issue, this is a real issue, and I guess I'm such a tech person. I'm solving the engineering problem, and I can totally see this real life copyright problem. I don't have the answer. I really don't know. I'm pretty sure people are going to post illegal material on here. The way we'll have to solve this as a company, as soon as they post something, they post a movie or something, no, we're going to have to block them from our website or something. But then they can still use the same software and post the movie, and then other people that actually download the app can still view it, and then the people that made the movie aren't getting paid. That's a real problem. I don't have the answer.
Don't monetize the product.
So another way to do this is when people make the movie. I'm sorry, there can't be any more questions because we have to move to the next person. So we can ask questions after it's over. Sorry, the second question was
Censorship.
censorship.
I don't have money, how do I?
Okay, so you can still post content. You just can't like give people tips or something to improve their visibility of their content. If you create good content and you earn money on the app, then you can pay money to upload other people's content. So there are more questions. I'll just have to talk to you guys after because we got to move on to Ryan Shea. So, all right, thank you.
Okay, so Ryan Shea is going to get set up. It's a lot of Ryan speaking tonight. So it's actually interesting. I mean, Ryan mentioned it. This is a very complimentary talk. Ryan's going to be going over OneName. Ryan's one of the co-founders of OneName. He's also, involved with Blockstack, and he is one of the lead developers for their Blockstore. He's also in a lot of libraries you probably use, like secret sharing libraries. He's a very active developer, and he's going to be speaking about OneName and identity today. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and hand it over to him. Please, everyone, give a nice round of applause for Ryan Shea.
Thank you, Travis. Hey, everyone. Very good to be here. We also rolled out with... I'm also here with a few other members of the OneName team. So we actually came out here for a couple weeks to show our stuff. Oh, thank you. There we go. Okay. So I just want to ask a few questions to get acquainted with you guys and see how many of you are familiar with the different things that I'm going to talk about. How many of you guys are familiar with OneName? Cool. Oh, that's good. How many of you guys are familiar with Blockstore? Okay. And how many of you know what a blockchain ID is? Okay. What is a blockchain ID to you? Does anyone want to answer?
It's an identifier for like an individual or a company that's stored on the blockchain. It's a decentralized identifier. Awesome.
Okay, cool. That's exactly. And we actually, Greg is one of the people who actually came up with this idea of blockchain ID. So, that's a very good person to answer that question. So, so actually, I'm going to go through a few things. I want to distinguish between the different terms that I'm going to use in this presentation. So there's OneName, which is the company that I work for, and it's a company that contributes to open source software. We do identity on the blockchain, and there's also this other organization. It's called Blockstack. So it's an organization. It's an open organization. There's a lot of different companies, developers that are a part of this organization and that help make it happen. OneName is one of the pioneers, one of the main contributors to the software that is under the purview of Blockstack. And so we help get off the ground, and there's a bunch of other organizations in there. We have a Slack community with over 350 people where we discuss various technologies and various things on the blockchain application stack. Blockstore is a service that is essentially doing DNS and PKI on the Bitcoin blockchain. And you can think of it as similar to Namecoin. It is a service that we have developed, a bunch of different developers inside of the Blockstack community. Most of the contributors actually, also they work for OneName, including Jude Nelson, who's right here, sitting in the crowd. And so the identities that are registered on Blockstore, they are known as blockchain IDs. So if you ever go to onename.com and you get an account and you get a profile, and it doesn't look like this, but we're actually working towards something that's going to look a little more like this. So I'm just giving you a little preview. But you can register a blockchain ID through us. We're one of the services that you can use to register blockchain IDs. But you can also do it on your own. You can fire up a Blockstore node and you can go and register it yourself because it's a decentralized system. We just act as a registrar, and we have our own profile explorer that you can use to actually view profiles. So those blockchain IDs, those are the identities that you can register on our service or on Blockstore if you run your own node. And then blockchain auth is our authentication protocol that uses blockchain ID lookups as part of the process of authentication, so that you can log in, you authenticate as a public key, and then you can identify yourself and reveal that that public key is linked to a blockchain ID in the process. But you don't have to, that's optional. Okay, so so all these things that I talked about, we're gonna kind of go through them briefly. This is more of an overview of these different concepts. And there's actually next week at the San Francisco Bitcoin Devs meetup, my co-founder Munib will be speaking more in depth about Blockstore specifically. But I'm going to start off with talking about Blockstore at the higher, like a higher level. So how many of you are familiar with Namecoin? Cool, okay. So we used to use Namecoin to register identities. We used to operate on top of Namecoin. And for a variety of reasons, it wasn't serving our purpose. So we were really concerned about operating on top of Namecoin, and we thought that we had to do something about that. We had to actually move over to a much more secure and stable system. And so we decided to move over to the Bitcoin blockchain by implementing a system that would give us the capability to do name registration and name resolution while operating on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. So we built this thing, it's called Blockstore, and the way it works is there are rules for name registration and name transferring, updating information associated with names, so you can either associate your profile information with a name, or you can associate like domain name resolution instructions with a name. And all of that logic does not happen on the Bitcoin blockchain. So transaction logic, when you spend money and so on, that happens directly on the Bitcoin blockchain. But what we did was we created this virtual layer on top of the Bitcoin blockchain that interprets the sequence of events that are broadcasted to the network, or that are actually stored in blocks. And it interprets the sequence of op-return transactions as operations for registering, transferring names. And you could think, if you guys are familiar with how counterparty works, it is similar to that, in that the logic for counterparty, you have to run a counterparty node, and you have to actually, the counterparty node will run through the blocks in sequence and will update the state over time. So Blockstore does the same thing. And one design decision that we made was to actually separate data storage, the data plane, from the actual logic that happens inside of Blockstore, the control plane. So the actual name registration happens in the Bitcoin blockchain. When you do a transaction in Blockstore, you're putting information in an op-return transaction. You're putting in a name, and then you're putting in a hash of data. So when the Blockstore client wants to do a lookup, it can actually check. First thing it does is it scans through the blockchain in sequence. It goes through all of the transactions, and it builds a database of names, right? And it does that by looking into the op-return transactions and then seeing and parsing out the name and hash associations. So you do a lookup, in the database it goes name to hash, and then when you want to get the actual data itself, you go over to the distributed hash table and you go and look up the data by hash and get the full data back. So what this does is it allows us to store a very small amount of information in the Bitcoin blockchain itself, because all full nodes are having a full copy of this information. And meanwhile, you can store larger pieces of information in the distributed hash table and only publish a hash of that information in the op-return of a transaction, which is in a sense notarizing that information. It cannot be changed, and it's securely associated with your name. So as I mentioned before, we moved over from Namecoin to Blockstore for a variety of reasons, but one big reason was actually the security of the network. And there was actually a time when the mining distribution on Namecoin was so disparate that there was a single mining pool, F2 pool, also, that actually had between 60 and 70% of the mining power on top of Namecoin. So we know that if this actually happened on Bitcoin, people would be freaking out, but of course nobody noticed. on Namecoin, and that is even worse than just the very bad distribution. So we were actually in our design of Blockstore, we were thinking about how we would actually separate the different components of. We're calling this it's a blockchain application stack. We developed this model, which basically shows that the Bitcoin blockchain is at the bottom, and it has it is the consensus layer. That is where the information is stored, and all of the nodes have an identical copy. And then Blockstore is sitting on top of it. Blockstore is a service that actually interprets that sequence of events and builds state. And then you have other services on top of that that can run on top of Blockstore nodes. You can think of the Blockstore nodes as registrars and the resolver in one. And then those API interfaces are sitting on top. And then you have applications that can use these services. So, okay, you can't really see this. Okay, so let me just escape and show you something. Okay, so right here, this is my profile on OneName.com. And you can see that I've associated information with my identity. I basically claimed my Twitter account, I've claimed my Facebook account, I've put a Bitcoin address, I've put in a PGP key, my name, my photo, and all of this information is stored directly in the DHT, and a hash of it is stored in the blockchain, right? This is stored according to the Blockstore model that I showed you before. And if you want to see the actual data, oh no. There's no internet, hold on. I'm gonna plug in my iPhone and it's magically going to give my computer internet powers. Here we go. No. There we go. Okay, cool. That worked. Yeah. So this is the information that's stored, and you can see how it's rendered by OneName.com into a profile. And anyone can actually run, like, so you can think of this as, you know, there's block explorers for Bitcoin. This is a profile explorer for Blockstore, right? So anyone can run a profile explorer. We actually have an open source version. So just like there's open source block explorers out there, anyone can just connect to the network and resolve profiles. Okay. And if you guys have any questions, if there's something that's clearly really confusing, you can interrupt me at any time. Yes, what's that?
So can you change the information in the blockchain so you're... Okay. So you've got a username that's pointing to a hash. If you want to change it later, can you override it? And if so, can anybody override it?
Yes, you can override it, but only you can, because in the protocol, your name is associated with the public key, and only that public key has permissions to update the hash associated with the name. Now, it also works for any type of script pub key in Bitcoin, so that could work with multisig as well.
So it's kind of like the protocol is defined that a future opportunity code transaction can overwrite the previous one only if the public key matches,
yep.
Signature matches, something like that?
Yep. And then that's the basics, but you could also delegate other public keys to be able to make updates, for example. Yes?
Do you have any existing tools to transfer ownership of the name to an individual and away from OneName? Because my understanding is that OneName has a copy of the private key.
We don't right now, but you can email support and we will do it manually for you. That's one. Two, you can actually, you get a file when you sign up that has a BIP38 encrypted version of your private key. So you could actually, if you know how to do BIP38, you could just go to, there are tools online for you to do BIP38 encryption. So you could actually.
So you could write your own tool
yes.
Without needing to
yes.
write customer support.
Correct. And actually, I could probably there is a service that does 38 decryption, so I could link you to that. Yeah. And we will add that feature as well, just to make it simpler. Yeah.
So the protocol is set up in a way where I guess anybody can make their own service that's similar, right? So it's not like, so it is truly decentralized. Is there a way where people can look up other things instead of by username? Like I want to look up this phone number, like what's the Bitcoin address associated with it, or email address?
We actually just added an index for, Munib was doing a lot of coding this weekend, and he added a lookup where you can look up accounts by Twitter or Facebook, and we can extend that to any other attribute. So if users want to put their phone numbers into their profiles, then we could add a lookup for that as well. The difficulty with phone numbers is managing this without infringing on someone's privacy, because if everyone puts their phone numbers in the blockchain, then it's kind of difficult. What you could do is store a hash of the phone number in the blockchain, so then when someone types in a phone number, there's a quick hash table lookup, which you could do. It would be trivial to do that in a fraction of a second. The issue there is brute forcing of the actual hashes. For some reason, you guys know Gravatar. For some reason, Gravatar uses MD5 hashes of all your information. So everything is public, essentially, if someone wants to brute force it, which is crazy to me, especially MD5 instead of SHA. But essentially, your email address is, well, yeah, but you could argue it's like a decent level of protection because very few people are going to actually brute force it. Who knows? Yes?
What DHT implementation are you using?
Kademlia. There's actually Python implementation of Kademlia that we're using to contribute to. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move forward and then we can do some more questions later. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is blockchain auth. So that's the authentication protocol that uses blockchain IDs. And I can actually show you guys a demo of that if you want to see it. We haven't released this yet, but it's pretty exciting. So the way it works is you have an app, and so most authentication protocols that you're probably familiar with, like OAuth 2, they use third-party auth providers, right? So you're a user, you log into an app, right? It says login, or like Facebook Connect, login to Facebook. You click the button, right? And then it redirects to Facebook, which is your auth provider. And then Facebook vouches for your identity, and then you go back to the app. So there's three parties involved. There's you, there's the application, and there's Facebook, right? You are who you say you are because Facebook says you are who you say you are. You are not you. I mean, Facebook could basically, impersonate every single person who logs into Facebook. Right? They are also tracking you, so they know all the apps that you log into. And then also, if the app is the app's completely dependent on Facebook, so like Facebook could shut down API access, and that actually happened for one of my previous companies. Yay! So Facebook, I'm coming for you.
So this is a revenge company?
No, I'm not going to say that, but not at all. Okay, so this is how blockchain auth works. So it's actually a peer-to-peer authentication protocol, as in like party A and party B, if they want to prove, if party A wants to prove who party A is to party B, they just send a signed message to party B. It's very simple, right? That's how it should work, okay? So the app sends an auth request to the user and the user's client. The user verifies the auth request to make sure it was generated by the app that claims to have signed it and uses a blockchain ID lookup there. Then the user sends back a request and response that use the same challenge that the app sent to the user. And then the app verifies the request, does another blockchain ID lookup there. And then the app logs the user in. It's super simple. So I can show you a little demo of this. And we're gonna come out with an app very soon that implements this blockchain auth system. Okay, so here is a demo blog. Okay, so it's a site. All right, and I can go and click login. And right now I have this Chrome extension right here. can't really see it, but. Okay. All right, so what you can see right here is there's an auth request that has been sent from the app server and is encoded in the HTML right there. And that's an auth request. And then if I go and click on my face, watch the auth response field. So, I don't know why that happened. but I just logged in. There we go. Okay, there we go. I logged myself in. It worked the second time. There we go. Okay, cool. So I just demonstrated authentication. We have an actual implementation on GitHub, and it's still being worked out, the details, but you can actually go check it out on github.com/blockstack, and you can actually try it out and integrate it into your app. Right. Okay. Now the second thing I'm going to talk about is privacy and how we accomplish that with multiple keys. So, okay. So there's a few issues with the aforementioned processes if we just use the same keys for everything, right? Because, and let's say a user actually wants to log into a bunch of different apps and they don't want to say who they are, right? This user can log in and just reveal, hey, I'm this public key and I'm over 21, or I'm just this user and my name is this, but I'm not going to tell you anything else. Or I live in this town and I went to this university, that's it. So this is a selective disclosure system. And the way to accomplish that is to make sure that every single website that you sign in with, you use a different key. You use a different key that you sign in with, but you also want to make sure that this key is derived from your master key, right? So you can basically log in with this key, and then you can later reveal to the app, if you'd like to, that that key was actually owned by you. And so we have this variation, or this actual protocol that's built on top of BIP32 for doing a basically deterministic method for key derivation that it's a deterministic method of key derivation that allows for proof later on, if you would like, that the keys are linked. So you can actually, the way it works is you take a pretty long secret, like let's say 256 bits, and you, how many of you guys are familiar with BIP32? Yep, cool, okay. So for those of you who don't know what BIP32 is, it's basically a hierarchical deterministic keychain system. So you have a master key, and then you have the ability to derive child keys from it. The way that it's traditionally used with BIP32 is you say child 0, and then child 1, and child 2, and child 3, right? The issue with that, of course, is that you can't make your XPub, your HD keychain, your master keychain. You cannot make your master keychain public without revealing all of your child keys, because if you do that, then someone could just brute force and go through all of the child keys and check what those keys are, and then go, haha, I see all these transactions in the Bitcoin blockchain, and I see all of these identity statements that were signed by you, for example, right? So if you're going to make your XPub public, then you have to use a system where the child derivations have a very large amount of entropy, right? And so what we do is we take a 256-bit random number, and then we generate a descendant keychain, right? You just keep going down the child paths, keep going down, and then you find this child of a child of a child of a child, and then that's the key that you use to log into a website, and that's also the key that you would use to sign an identity statement about yourself. So you can sign, so instead of actually signing your entire profile with one key, you can sign like one statement that says, this is my name. You sign another statement with a different key that says, this is my age, you sign another statement with a different key that says this is my Twitter profile, and so on. And so this lets us separate, actually do like fragment our identity statements and do selective disclosure when we're logging into applications to preserve our privacy, right? And every time you create a new child key and you use that. And then if you want to prove that the child key was actually a child of the master, you just share the path from the master to the child, which is basically a hash because it's a 256-bit number. Right? So that's simple. Yeah, go.
First, kudos to you for thinking
Mm-hmm.
to do that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And how do you ensure that the applications that actually use this protocol don't screw this up and don't accidentally put different profiles into the same keychain?
I would say that we have reference implementations, and so if it's easier for them to just use that reference implementation than to create their own, then it'll prevent them from actually doing that. And actually providing good guidelines to make sure that they know exactly how the system's supposed to work.
So if there are like two different apps
Mm-hmm.
made by two different
Mm-hmm.
groups of developers,
Mm-hmm.
what's the likelihood that the way that they implement their apps ends up sharing that information in this?
What do you mean ends up sharing the information?
Ends up putting it on the same level as one of the.
That's not possible.
Okay.
As long as it's implemented correctly, as long as there's 256 bits of randomness, then it's not gonna. All right, and that's it. Yeah, I just gave you guys a bunch of information. So this is me, I'm Ryan Shea, and it's my email if you want to contact me. That's my blockchain ID, right? And then that's my Twitter handle, website. Oh, and also our organization, Blockstack, that I told you about before, we have over 350 people in the Slack. We have a bunch of people on our forums. You should go and check it out. It's a really cool organization. There's dozens of companies that are members, and you can check us out at blockstack.org. And a lot of the open source code that I talked about is at github.com/blockstack. And then our Slack is at chat.blockstack.org, and you can just join it. You just request an invite, and you'll get at it. So, happy to take questions. Or, yeah, I guess, I don't know. But, yep. That's a good question. We get that a lot. Yeah, that's a good question, and I don't know. Okay. So what we're really focused on is growing the community and growing this effort initially, because I think if you think about it, if it doesn't actually take off, it doesn't start to grow, then that didn't really matter whether we had a path to make money in it either way. So we have to get there first. But in the long term, so that Chrome extension that I showed you before that implements blockchain auth where you can log into websites, that is going to be completely open source, and anyone can. It's also anyone can run it, can install it themselves. You can fork it, you can make modifications to it. But we're thinking of having a premium version that is not with additional features that aren't going to be open source, that are going to be paid for the enterprise. That's one way. And then the second way is to actually sell services for identity and authentication for businesses, like APIs, dashboard, analytics for different sites that want to integrate authentication, that want to run Blockstore nodes, and so on. So there, you can think of the model similar to what like Mongo has, or to what like Databricks or Red Hat, for example. Yeah.
How many Blockstore nodes are running?
So Blockstore is pretty young. I would say somewhere around a dozen. I don't know exactly how many, but we just it's the newest version as of last month. So it's pretty, yeah. But there's a lot of people who are looking at actually running new Blockstore nodes. So yeah.
Any disadvantages moving from Namecoin to Bitcoin?
I'm sure there are. I can't think of any.
When you're using Namecoin, string in a separate layer as well, or was it in Namecoin?
It was in Namecoin. So yeah, I mean, it allowed for 520 bytes. So just like
So then you
Bitcoin
had to do
scripts.
that
Yeah.
when you moved to Bitcoin, right?
We had to, sorry?
You had to introduce an additional layer
Of,
to store the
yes,
data.
correct. We had to introduce the distributed hash table, yeah.
So is there any risk with the distributed hash table? Like, I'm not familiar with that project you mentioned, but I don't know, could somebody run a node that was malicious and it was returning bad data from the hash, that kind of thing?
No, because if you know the hash, then you know what the data should look like, because you get the data back and then you check, you actually hash that data, and you're like, hey, does this hash match the hash that I know about? And if it does, then you know that the data is correct. So nodes can't give you wrong data. There is the possibility that there could be denial of service, but because it's a distributed hash table, there's a very low chance of that actually happening. And we also have mechanisms to prevent these kind of attacks. So.
And what's the name of that project again? The distributed hash table is running?
Kademlia. It's the Python implementation of Kademlia. Yeah.
Just following up on that, did you look at using any other DHCs? Why did you choose that?
We did look at a few others. Munib and Jude can actually better speak to that, but I'm not an expert on distributed hash tables, but Munib at the SF Bitcoin Devs meetup will be speaking in depth about that stuff. So, yep.
So if you're using this auth mechanism, do you actually need private key material on the device that you're using to authenticate, or is it some sort of passphrase-based encryption thing?
Yeah, so the private key is stored in the browser in this case, and for let's say the iOS or Android version, private key would also be stored on the device, but you can encrypt it, and we're going to be adding like before we actually release this, there's going to be the capability for you to have the password encrypted. Also, the private key encrypted. Also, you'll be able to log in with multi-signature, so you could require that your desktop and your phone sign messages for you to log in. Yeah. Yep.
How many options do you actually need to use? You mentioned you use a couple of them. Is that because you have to do things in sequence? A has to come first, then B, C.
Yeah.
And you have to wait for each transaction to confirm before you do it.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it because full byte or without e byte of the options? Because otherwise you could do everything in one.
The first, yeah.
How are the fees going to affect OneName going forward? If, as some people want Bitcoin on a sediment type network, surely these kind of like registration services will be priced down to be able to go blockchain.
Yeah. So we have a two-stage name registration process, because if you have a one-stage name registration process, someone could race you to a block and actually steal your name. So it's actual a cryptographic commitment in the first stage, and then a reveal of the name that you committed in the previous stage. And then after that, you have to do a third operation to associate data with your name. So that's why. As far as the fees itself, they're actually pretty low if you think about it. Like they're, in the order of cents, and that is a pretty low. Like if you think about the customer acquisition costs of a lot of startups, they're on the order of like 20 cents, $1 for social applications, $2. So it's pretty reasonable. But Bitcoin fees will actually increase over time. And so we're working on a mechanism to actually pack multiple name operations into a single transaction, and that Blockstore would actually interpret that set of operations together. So, yep.
Have you considered using IPFS?
So we actually have, the way that, one more clarification about Blockstore is that you can use any data storage system that you want to store the information. And so we're writing plugins for Blockstore. So IPFS is actually one of the plugins that we're looking into. So you could use IPFS, you could use the distributed hash table that is already native, you can use S3, you can use Syndicate, which you can use really any data store you want. So I think that's my last question. But if you guys have any other questions afterwards, you can come up to me and I'm happy to field them. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. While the lovely Thomas Hunt gets ready for the lightning speakers, I did want to say again, thank you so much, Ryan X. Charles and Ryan Shea, for coming out today. It seemed like a really interesting topic. There are a lot of questions that still wanted to be asked. They're going to hang out a bit after, so you're free to talk to them then. But Let's just one more last round of applause for Ryan X. Charles, Ryan Shea. Thank you so much for coming on. Of course, I really want to thank Runway for this space. They've been super helpful. I definitely want to do more events here. This is an absolutely wonderful space. Thank you so much, Runway. I think I saw, they'll hear us applauding. Yeah. And then, as always, thank you, Coinbase, for all the lovely beer and pizza and for sponsoring us and sponsoring this event. So we're going to do lightning talks now. For anybody who missed when I said this earlier, it's essentially you have 1 minute to talk about whatever subject you like. We have 4 people already signed up. So if you guys want to start lining up over here, everyone who signed up for lightning talk. And also, if you guys didn't get a chance to put your name on the list, but you want to do it now, we do have time. So just get behind those 4 people, and we'll go and take care of you too. So do we have websites? Oh, okay. All right, we're going to figure out the websites really quick, and then we'll jump right in. All right, so first up we have Martin. He's going to talk about StrawPay. Martin?
Hi, I'm Martin from StrawPay. Have you ever clicked on a headline and then you didn't get the story? Instead, you get a message that you needed to subscribe. So has that happened to you? Did you subscribe?
No.
No, because you wanted to read and not register. If there was a button that said pay 10 cents to read, at least I would click buy. But you never see that button. That's because today's systems cannot handle micropayments. And that's why StrawPay has created Strom, an open source network, payment network that can handle micropayments. And we have a running prototype, which I'm happy to show you, but I don't have time now. So come up and talk to me afterwards, and I'll show you the nice demo.
Good evening, guys. My name is Dan Bainbridge, and I've given away 440 Bitcoin. I've got 2 halves to my company. That's about $120,000 worth at today's value. But 2 halves to my company. 1 half is coinad.com. We're a Bitcoin banner advertising network. It's not innovative tech on the blockchain. It's working right now. We've got 60 publishers signed up. We served 400,000 banner impressions last month and 200,000 clicks on those banners. The other half of my company, how we've given away this free Bitcoin, where we got started, is with gamifying Bitcoin. This guy's our mascot. He's called Daniel the Alien. We've got 3 mobile apps, the most popular of which is called Free Bitcoin. It's in the App Store. If you search for Bitcoin, it's second in both Android and Apple. And yeah, if you're a Bitcoin wallet, service, freebie, I've got Bitcoin traffic. Thank you, guys.
Hi, I'm Jay Feldis from Bitseed. This is our product, Bitseed V2. It is a turnkey Bitcoin full node. So you plug it in to power, you plug it into your Ethernet, and it runs a full node. It's very low power, always on, very quietly sits there in the corner and does its thing. So if you're into Bitcoin, you should have one of these. Further, in the future, we would like to see this product do more than just a full node, as a lot of people are developing interesting applications that could run on this. For instance, it already does run Blockstore. So, you know, there's a lot of things we could do on an always-on little personal server that sits in people's house with a blockchain on it. So, if anybody's got any ideas, let us know. Thank you.
So finally we have Mike. There'll be a last lightning talk unless somebody else wants to jump on.
I'm Mike Doty. I've been working with Jay on the BitSeed project, but I'm here tonight to talk about Crypty. We're rolling out our new release with distributed applications. We've been running it on the testnet for the last month. And on the Crypty site here, there's documentation on how you can create your own dApps and install them. It has a Node.js backend, and the dApps can be written in JavaScript, CSS, HTML. And you can think of it, it's like there's a main vine, and then the dApps are all like clusters of grapes. They're all secured by the main Crypty chain. And then you have your own nodes or processors that run the dApps instead of everything having to run on the main chain. So it's very scalable. And we have a community chat channel is crypty.chat if you want to join the community. Also, we have 1 million XCR, that's the cryptocurrency contest for writing dApps. And a few dApps will be coming out when we roll the main chain.
We have one more last minute lightning talk.
Hey, my name is Noah. Sorry. My name is Noah. I'm from CoinBeyond, and we are taking advantage of the EMB switchover to get Bitcoin in more merchants' hands. So basically, everybody has to. There's 75% of merchants have to upgrade to smart cards, and so we're creating a new point of sale system with great user interface that is, just gets them ready for the future with EMB, chip and pin, chip and signature 2 years from now, and then we say, hey, you know what, you're ready for Bitcoin, so you don't have to upgrade again.
All right, so with that ends our Bitcoin meetup for today. Thank you everybody for coming out. We still have lots of drinks in the back. All the speakers still hanging out, so you guys can chat. If you have any questions about the meetup itself, my name's Travis, so find me back there as well. And yeah, everyone, please have more drinks. Thank you for coming out.